This is the 1010music Blackbox 2, the follow-up to their popular Blackbox sampler. And if you think that it looks like someone shrunk a 1010music bento, then you wouldn't really be wrong. And here's all side by side. We have the old Blackbox here, we have new Blackbox 2, and we have the bento. And as you can see, the bento is substantially larger. And for on-the-go music making, the Blackbox 2 fits very nicely in your hand like so. The Blackbox 2 is a 4-track battery-powered multi-sampler with solid live looping capabilities and performance effects. And while it shares a lot of the DNA from its bigger sibling, the bento, it lacks the synth engines of the bento. But I also think that the smaller size of the Blackbox 2 will actually make it quite appealing to a lot of people. And if we take a quick look at the I/O, we have headphones out, we have 3 audio outputs, stereo audio outputs, 1 audio input, stereo, we have MIDI in and out, clock in and out, MIDI host that can power an external MIDI keyboard or controller, for example, and then we have the power and data input here. And just like all other 1010music devices, you save your data on a micro SD card. So let me do an overview of what the Blackbox 2 is. So we have 4 tracks here, and the Blackbox 2 doesn't have synthesizers. That's reserved for the bento, but we do have a bunch of different sample engines. So double tap to check out all the presets, or I could just create a new empty instrument. So we have multi-sample, one-shot, looper, slicer. We have a shredder, which is like a granular, not really a synth, more a granular sampler. And then we have external. Now I want to start by showcasing what I think is actually Blackbox 2 and maybe bento's strongest feature. And that is its looper tracks. So looper track has all of these slots here. So you have 16 slots for loops, and you can live record into them. Together with the multi-sampling, I think that the looper is actually one of Blackbox's best features. Next up, let's talk about the multi-sampled instruments. And to do that, I've also connected a MIDI keyboard here into the host input, because there's a MIDI host input on the device that can also power something like a keystep or a small MIDI controller. On the Blackbox itself, if you press instrument, or you could play it using the grid. You also have one LFO and one envelope, but there aren't a huge number of mod destinations. So if you press mod here, you can see the list here. it's not huge. You have filter, cutoff, resonance, you have panning, you have pitch, I believe, and level. And I'm definitely missing automations, so you can't record automations into the sequencer. If you press sequencer, we get this little view here. You recognize it from a DAW, and you can, of course, record into it from an external MIDI keyboard. So when we have a little sequence here, we can move around in it, zoom in and out. We can also use the event view in order to select any of the notes. So for example, I want to move this note here. And while it's not my favorite way of interfacing with a polyphonic track, it's also not the worst. And right there when I was recording, you could also hear a weird bug where I'm letting go of a note and it creates like a ghost trigger of that note. It's not, however, recorded into the sequencer. And it's the same thing with the external keyboard as well. When you let go of keys, sometimes it double triggers that key when you are recording. So this is something that 1010music needs to check out. The Blackbox 2 can also multi-sample. So we can press here, press new, and multi-sample, and now we can press record and we can name it something. So let's record. And when it's done recording, we have the instrument here. We can play it polyphonically. And I will say that the multi-sampler alone is a big selling point because there aren't many samplers out there in this small form factor and being battery powered that can offer multi-sampling. I will say, however, that one thing that annoyed me is that the record threshold here doesn't have like a visual indicator. I don't really know where it is in relation to the actual sound that is coming in here. As you probably heard already, there are some effects as well. So we have reverb, and we have delay. We also have a master EQ here. That lets you adjust EQ for the entire thing or just bypass it. But there is no per track EQ, and that's something that I'm missing. So from the mixer view, we can select level, panning, delay, and reverb. So if we have delay here selected, you can see we can increase it. Press reverb, increase or decrease. You can also mute here or solo. But there's also some performance effects. So there are these X and Y pads, and here we have a bunch of different performance effects. They sound okay. They don't sound as good as a Chaos pad, but they're quite nifty. So we have our beat repeater, we have gator, filter, and on the other side here we have bit crusher, filter, echo, echo with a high pass filter, flanger, and another echo. With the X and Y pads, there's this unfortunate little bug here. So if there's any audio going on and I change the type here, you can hear that it clicks. So that's a little annoying. Then there's also the slice track type, and it does exactly what the name suggests. It takes a sample and divides it into slices, and you can add slice points, or you could scan the sample and get automatic slice detection. So under instrument view, we have the actual slices. And then under sequencer, we have the same sequencer as we have before, and we can actually double it. And maybe we'll make a little bit of a change here. So we can move this note up here, and why not double it again and make some other change here. I guess now is a good time to talk about the scenes, song, and launch modes here. So launch basically is the 8 sequences that we have per track. As you can see here, we have 3 sequences selected. And then scene creates a scene out of, so if we have scene 1 selected here, you can see scene 2, we can have, I think, up to 8 scenes. So 8 scenes, and you select whatever sequences you want in that scene, and then in song mode, each part of the song here has a scene attached to it, and you can also repeat the scenes. And while there's no song export, so you can't bounce the files down to WAV file, not as of this firmware anyway, and it would be nice if they added it, but you can internally resample, so that's one way of exporting your track. So for scene 1, let's go with the piano and the bass, and then for scene 3, I've added in a different bass, and we're going to add in a sequence that I recorded. Then we have the granular track type, which is called shredder, and it's not really a granular synth, it's more a granular sampler. You can set the grain size, and you can set the density, but you can't really get these big cloudy sounds out of it. Instead, what I think it's actually best at is using it for time stretching. So it's not a perfect time stretching, but since there's no other option, it's nice that it's there. Here I have a loop. And this loop is actually originally 135 BPMs. But since you can go here to set up, and you can actually change the speed here, so it's 78.8%. But if I turn it up to 100%, you're gonna hear it's gonna get really out of sync. So to get it back in line, 78.8%. Yes, you have to do this manually. And then we have the track type for external gear, and here's some oddities. So here you can set the level, the panning, the MIDI in channel, and output. That's the audio output. But you can't really set the MIDI output channel. To do that, you have to actually go here for config track and then put MIDI out channel here. And this is a little confusing because if I'm loading a certain track here that is supposed to take care of the signals here, I would have liked to have the actual settings here. I mean, it could just be a duplicate if there's a reason why it needs to be here in the track config. The main point of the external channel, however, is to be able to add effects. And this goes for the X and Y pad as well. It's also a little confusing why there's no keyboard for the external track type. So if I press the instrument here, there is no keyboard that I can use to actually play the external instrument. So maybe I'm just a little confused here, but yeah, it works. You can use the sequencer to sequence external gear, and yeah, it works, but I would have loved a keyboard here that I could use to play an external instrument. And I want to mention that there are some input bugs, so You can hear that I'm coming in on the left, but if I go to in L, I don't get any sound. So there's something with the settings for the input that doesn't work, but it works for certain modes in certain situations. So it seems to be just a software thing that they need to fix. Let's load some drums, and there's a preview function. And I like this kit, so I press load, and the instrument view looks like this. So in order to make a little sequence, we just press sequence here. You can also change probability of the steps. So you can hold down the steps and turn down the probability. You can also change the offset. And if we want to make it longer, we can just press here, press double in order to get a longer sequence. And for most of the track types, you can press instrument multiple times in order to see the waveform here. And here we can do a few different things. So under sound, we have level, control, pitch, filter, resonance. So the filter and resonance here is per individual one shot. And then we have panning, overdrive, delay, and reverb. So we could select the snare here and have individual delay and reverb applied to it. And when we are here, we can also, for example, edit the wave file. So we can normal it. We can also set the start and end points like so. And this is, of course, very useful, for example, when you're dealing with loops or you're dealing with the slicer. And in setup, we can reverse the sample. We can set a choke group. We can also turn up polyphony. And if we go to envelope and LFO, we have an envelope here, an LFO here. You can change the waveform here, the rate, the depth. And then if you press here, you can go to modulation and we can set up a modulation LFO to filter. And here's one of those small annoying things. You have to turn the knob quite a bit. I think it's, I don't know, it takes a little while to turn up to 24%, but yeah, maybe that's something they can change. So if we go to the hi-hat, we can go here to modulation, and we could use, for example, the LFO here to pitch, and maybe some LFO to panning. And what's really nifty is that each of these individual sounds has its own LFO and envelope setup. So now we can take a new waveform here, and we can change the rates to whatever we want. Oh, and if you press sequencer, not once, but twice, you can also see this view here. So it's a note view. Now I will say that even with small hands, which I have, it can be quite tricky sometimes to put down the notes exactly where you want them. And here's a weird thing. If I play the one shots here and double tap, I open up the waveform, which is a little weird because I assume I should be able to use this to live input into the sequencer. So yeah, I found that kind of weird. So when I reviewed the Bento, I had a lot of complaints. Overall, I really liked the Bento. You could make some great music with it, but at the time of making my review, it just wasn't done cooking. And thankfully, I think that the Blackbox 2 is in a much better state. A lot of the tracks work much better than they did on the Bento, and the looper is finished and works really well, and it has some great performance effects that I think are also in the new Bento update. I really need to check out the new Bento update because so much has happened since I first reviewed it. And I haven't had any major crashes with the Blackbox 2, and overall it seems to work reasonably well, but of course there are a few bugs. And here's a small thing, but if you see here, we have overdrive 0%. And when I turn the knob, it immediately gets really loud. Like the first couple of percentages are just super loud compared to turning it off. So yeah, that's something that they need to fix. And there is a metronome with counting, and it works almost all of the time. And yes, you can bring up a menu here and you can set the level of the metronome here, and you can turn it off and you can set it to only play when you're recording or play all the time. And I've had a bug where it just stops making any sound, even though the settings here are correct. So that's something they need to look at. So beside the bugs, here are some complaints that I have with the Blackbox 2, and the biggest one is the track count. If you're using it standalone, the 4 tracks feels very limiting because you run out of tracks very quickly. And it's especially weird when you're loading a bass sound and like a grand piano sound, and both take up 1 track each. And say you want to use an external track as well, then suddenly you're running out of resources really quickly. And here's a suggestion on how to add more tracks. So we have the 4 tracks here. You could just go up and down. You could have 2 pages and a little icon here saying 1, 2. So first page, first 4 tracks, press down, second page, 4 more tracks. Or for example, 4 tracks with samples, press down 4 MIDI tracks, for example. And here's the good part. In my testing, I've never been over like 40-50% CPU usage when I'm using the Blackbox 2, so I think there's definitely room to expand beyond 4 track. And here's a few other things that I am really missing, and that is that there's no automation recording, there's no per part EQ, and just having a simple EQ, you know, with mid, low, and high frequencies that you can adjust, you know, it doesn't have to be a super complex EQ. It just goes a long way to make sure stuff fits in a mix. And I've said this before, I think in my Bento review and probably in my Nanobox's reviews, that I'm not a big fan of how 1010 handles note resolution. So my issue is that when you increase the note resolution, you have to extend the sequence to have it play the same time. I would rather have a system where the sequence is a specific set of time and the resolution is simply that. Resolution, you increase the resolution. Like you do in a DAW, for example, when you increase from 16th note resolution to 32, the actual time it takes to play that sequence doesn't really change. And speaking of things that I love to see, more MIDI tracks. If you could do, say, 8 MIDI tracks on it with some CC automation per track, then suddenly the little Blackbox 2 would also be a contender for a great portable MIDI sequencer. And 2 last things. When it comes to sequencing, I'm missing per step functions like ratcheting and rolls. I would also, secondly, love an arpeggiator. It would be especially great for the multi-sampled instruments. So here are some final thoughts. I think that the future for the Blackbox 2 and Bento is promising. The hardware itself is excellent, and I feel like the 1010music's experimentation with the Nanobox series really led somewhere. I mean, the Blackbox 2 feels like what the Nanoboxes should have been. Small, really well designed, battery powered and portable, and it works just as well in the studio where you can have it as a companion to your other gear or on the go for just some mobile music making. But it could also get even better if they change a few things. So those were my thoughts about the Blackbox 2. Hope you have a great day. Talk to you all later.